All right, what's happening, guys? Peter here, talking about financial coaching. And one of the things that I saw that came up here was a question which kind of drove me down a different path here. But the question was actually about Canada rules. And it's one of those things that I thought about. I actually went up to Canada and spoke at a financial conference and did that with CPA Canada. Awesome organization, fantastic. And I actually listened to some of the speakers that preceded me and actually learned a lot about Canada finance, just for about 80 minutes prior to my speech. But one of the things that I realized is that there are a lot of differences. There are a lot of systematic differences in government programs and programs for different companies. Their 401k is kind of different. The rules around distribution and strategies around taking those and balancing with the kind of the social programs and the social benefit programs is different. And one of the things that I cringed at when I saw this post about, hey, I've got this person from Canada that I want to work with. Is there anything I should know? I cringe because, yes, there's a ton you should know, and you are never going to learn it in the week before your conversation. And should you even be dealing with them? This brings up a couple things. One, you need to have a lot of information, but you need to figure out where to focus. For my financial coaching, I worked with anyone in the United States. Never even tried elsewhere. Some people brought it up. Hey, I've got this friend in from Toronto and they live in the United States, and you can actually coach those people because if they're working under the framework of the United States, that's fine. But if they live in Canada, or had it come up where someone was asking me if I could talk to someone they knew in Europe, and I just shy away from that. I decline all that because the problem is there are things that might be commonplace and conventional wisdom and common knowledge in those areas that you just don't know, and you don't want to stumble over it. Now, that's my advice on dealing with international clients. But here is the broader problem with it. And the fundamental issue with it to me is that I think people are misunderstanding what financial coaching actually is. So, financial coaching, in its purest form, in its rawest form, in its most unadulterated form, is really about working with people and having them discover inside of them what they want to do. Their value structure and their priorities, what's important to them, what brings them utility, calling that out, figuring out what are those impasses, and helping them break through that, giving them some ideas and strategies, helping them kind of walk through that in their own mind so that they can achieve more, based on what they have as skill sets and what is holding them up within their own mind. Now, coaching is that. Coaching is really often releasing the inner power of people, the inner potential. Financial coaching has a challenge of often blending other roles on the financial spectrum. And what I mean by that is, even though that in and itself is what really coaching is, most people, when they come to you with financial concerns, need some of that coaching. And some engagements can be very much strictly coaching, right? Just helping them explore themselves internally. The problem is most people don't really understand what the confines of coaching are, and those discussions jump all over. And there is a fairly large range on the spectrum of financial services, and often people, while trying to solve a problem, will jump all over. And the problem here is that most financial coaches are willing to jump, but they think they're equipped because they are versed in financial coaching. And the reality is, financial coaching is maybe foundational. I would actually say financial therapy is probably one of the most base level experiences, right? It's really our values and our experiences with money. Financial coaching is maybe helping them untap some of that and figuring out what priorities and goals and helping them to achieve more. The financial counseling is being a little bit more prescriptive, throwing in more solutions, more information. Financial education has a huge range of things, from me just telling you some information that's relevant to you, especially right now, say in the recovery, the stimulus bill, what are some of the specifics with it. But it can also be standing up in front of a crowd and educating them about a new tactic or a strategy or some educational piece. So there's financial education. There's also financial advising, right? And so this is something where most people avoid it because it tends to require licenses and insurance and gets deeper, but it's giving people actually specific strategies and guidance and specific recommendations. And the problem with it is that over that spectrum, you can jump around a lot, right? So if someone comes in and says, hey, I just don't understand why my career stalled, I really want help on that, you can probably spend some time in understanding, their value structure and stay really within the realm of financial coaching. But then they might say, hey, I saw some strategies on investing in, LinkedIn profile and career counseling and interviewing, mentoring, and interviewing practice and some of these other things. And if you don't know anything about those, you can't really speak to it, right? But if you do, then you can bring information. You're playing kind of that financial educator role. And then if you're telling them, hey, this is what I see from you, listen, you are very knowledgeable, you're very smart, but you don't communicate very well. You're really slow communicating, or you jumble your point, or whatever it might be. You're kind of playing that counselor role, and you're saying, hey, maybe what you should do is join as Toastmasters or work with someone on communication. And then you're kind of giving them some instructions. So you're jumping around a lot, right? Even on a very simple topic, you might be jumping around a lot. And that's where financial coaches often start to roam from what they really are supposed to be doing instead of doubling down. Now, there's probably two schools of thought to this, and I probably fall in the latter camp, where you can either become specifically a financial coach and stay in financial coaching, but it's so tough. It's so tough because clients don't necessarily want to be told, hey, that's outside of my purview, and that's going under the curbs. They just want to have that conversation, and they don't really care that you aren't a mortgage broker. They just want to know, should I think about buying a home or whatever it might be, right? And you might say, hey, well, that's not for me to decide, and I'm not licensed in that, and I don't give tax advice, and blah, 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 blah. You've heard it all, right? So, on one hand, you can double down and stay narrow. I think, for me, what people don't want to do is, as I was mentioning, is kind of be boxed in unnecessarily. And so what I want to do for myself is be very versed in a lot of different things. That's why I have studied financial coaching as well as counseling and advising. I've held licenses in fact, so that I could place a business or talk about individual securities in some cases, from my financial planning side. So I can kind of swing up and down the spectrum a little bit more, and in many cases people find a lot of value in that. So you just have to figure out who you're working with and generally what the confines are, and then don't be afraid to say, hey, this is my boundary, because what you don't want to do is give someone the impression that you have expertise where you don't. And there's a lot of places that I don't have it, and what I usually say is, here's my understanding of it, but that's not an area I'm an expert in. I would certainly suggest asking a mortgage broker what the interest rates are. I can look up online what the 30-year fix is going for in your area, but that doesn't mean anything if they're not looking at your credit score, or maybe you're applying jointly, those types of things. So, what I will do is I will kind of start giving some really explicit explanations of why I can't fill in that picture for them or answer that question with precision. And that helps them say, hey, all right, now I was going to ask the question about, what are the income needs for qualifying, or the loan to value thresholds for this bank or whatever it might be. And they'll know I won't know that. In other cases, we just jump over there and they say, hey, I'm looking at buying pharmaceutical ETF, should I buy this? And this is the one I'm looking at. And I'll just say, hey, that's not something we can talk about here. I think that those would be great questions. It might be perfect for you, but you really want to find a licensed broker, a licensed advisor who can kind of walk that through you, because that's got to be a suitable recommendation for you if you're going to invest in it. So there's a lot of times when I hit those curbs too, and don't be shy about saying, hey, this is the threshold we've hit where I've got to either refer you off, or you've got to think about pulling in someone else, or you've got to do your own homework. A lot of people are DIY. So that's a long-winded way from me getting from someone who was asking a question about Canadian finance rules to saying, first of all, I stay domestic, I stay only what I know, and then when you get to those thresholds where it's outside of coaching, you've got to decide, are you going to branch out? Are you going to be someone who can talk about those specific rules? Are you going to become an expert on Canadian finance and personal finance and all of the information that comes with that? Or are you going to stay really within your wheelhouse, which is just the financial coaching? Now, you might expand that wheelhouse, and I'm certainly a big fan of that too, but you've got to really decide what you're going to do and not just kind of do things in a one-off state. So hopefully that helps as you think about, what's my role as a financial coach, and, where do I want to focus? See you later.